Some of the questions we've gotten so far have kind of focused on evangelization, and especially evangelizing the young. And I think it's something that Father Barron touched upon. So any thoughts on how to bring Christ to the young and evangelize the young, especially for educators and so forth?
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. I target in my work 20-somethings, 30-somethings. A strategy I've used is to reach out positively to the culture, especially books, movies, music, where people are. Notice themes in the culture, both popular and high culture, that are redolent of Christianity, and point them out. So, as Pope Francis said in that recent interview, not to begin with the finger wagging so much, which tends to get nowhere today because all the hackles go up in our postmodern culture. Don't tell me what to do. But begin with the beautiful, I would recommend. With the beautiful as you see it reflected in the culture. Here's the other thing, everybody. Don't dumb down the message. This is, I feel, thank you. My generation got to dumb down Catholicism, and it was a pastoral disaster. Because when we grew up, life hit us in the face, and religion was seen as something childish. Look at the Benedictine tradition. Look at the Dominican tradition, these great Catholic trajectories. Don't bracket that, oh, the kids can't handle it. You know, that story, I'll bore you with the story, but because I've told it before about my niece when she was in high school, and she's reading Hamlet for English, she's reading Einstein for physics, she's reading Virgil's Aeneid for Latin, and in religion she's reading a comic book. And it drove me crazy. But see, the communists didn't come and do this to us. We did it to ourselves, you know. We dumbed down our own tradition. Kids are smart, and we hand them Hamlet in English class. Why don't we hand them Thomas Aquinas? You know, or at least C.S. Lewis or Chesterton or something serious in religion. So that's the second thing, is don't dumb it down. But the kids want something substantial.
This one says, I look forward to the Word on Fire commentary in the Pope's recent interview. And then it asks, would you care to share any preliminary thoughts now?
No, I'd be happy to. It is coming, by the way. I just wrote a little piece on it, and it is coming. I think, as I hinted in the talk, a lot of Gaudium et Spes type themes are in that papal interview. And that idea that's so dear to Francis of the church not turning in, but the church turning out, you know, to the world. And also not beginning with the finger wagging thing. I've been saying that for years, and I think he's dead right about that. You begin with, I'm a sinner who's been gazed upon by the gracious face of Christ. You begin with the mercy of the Lord. Now, you draw people to conversion and discipleship. See, I don't want to end with, oh, God is love and you're great, and that's the end of the story. And that's that cheap grace that Bonhoeffer, you know, criticized. That's the cheap grace that my generation got too. Dumb down Catholicism and this kind of easy peasy Catholicism, you know, of God is love and you're great, and then just do whatever you want. Well, that's not the real thing. In fact, remember Francis says that in the interview, is that authentic mercy is neither finger wagging or laxity. You know, hey, don't worry about it, it's not a sin. No, Christ looks at us with a gaze of mercy, and then he calls us to discipleship. The Pope used the example of the Caravaggio painting of the call of Matthew, right? Well, yeah, he calls Matthew out of his life as a tax collector. He has a party with him, all those wonderful things. But then, by God, he called Matthew to discipleship, which led to Matthew's martyrdom. You know, so it's that wonderful both and that I think the Pope is trying to drive at, and to get away from kind of a cramped moralizing. I quite agree with that. That's a quick reaction. I do have much more to say about it, but that's a quick reaction.
You do have a compliment. Your knowledge of classic rock is great. So let's throw it out there. This one, I think we'll perhaps end on this one. I think it's a good question. It's really a question about, you mentioned the challenge of Vatican II being so large.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge for it to be interpreted or read. And so how do we get Vatican II correctly interpreted and get people really to draw from its fruit?
Yeah. That is a very good question. And might be happy to end on that one too, because it's a big question. You know, something Cardinal George said that has always struck me. He said, the death of Cardinal Meyer was a disaster. So Cardinal Meyer of Chicago was at Vatican II. He was a scripture man. he knew all the great players at Vatican II. He knew Congar and de Lubac and Ratzinger and everybody. He was a major player at Vatican II. He comes home, Chicago priests of a certain age still get misty-eyed remembering this. He came home, had 2 sessions, because the presbyterate was so large, he gathered them in 2 sessions, and he spoke about the council, what it meant. He got roaring standing ovations both times. 6 months later, he was dead of a brain tumor. And Cardinal George has said, I think quite rightly, the death of Meyer was a disaster because he had a very keen knowledge of the council and could have interpreted for the American church the way Karol Wojtyła interpreted it for the Polish church. Look at Wojtyła in the wake of the council, goes right back to Krakow, has a major synod where he has the entire diocese read the council documents. Well, I mean, trust me, I didn't do that as a kid. We didn't read the council documents. We got a fair amount of sloganeering off of the council documents, you know? But the fact that Meyer died was a bit of a disaster. So then second thing I would say is, yes, read them. And I know the style of the documents militates against that. Lengthy, ruminative, in some cases committee-driven rhetoric is not the most readable. So I understand that it's hard to interpret them. But I would say make the effort to read them. My view, honestly, everybody, you sensed it tonight, I think, is Vatican II is still a largely unrealized council. Point after point, it's a largely unrealized council. And not in the ways we'd usually expect, not the left-right debates going on, but in these deeper ways. I think it's largely unrealized. That's why Vatican III, forget it. We got so much work to do to implement Vatican II. Here's a third recommendation, I would say. Rediscover the fathers. Vatican II is a fruit of the Nouvelle Théologie. So these great figures that recovered the Bible and the fathers, right? Now, they love Thomas Aquinas too, and he's in there in a more muted way. But the fathers are there. Read Origen and Augustine and Chrysostom and Jerome and those people. They're the ones who gave rise to the people that produced the conciliar documents. You want to read a more contemporary church father who writes in English? Newman. I think read Newman and you'll understand a lot of Vatican II. So those are a couple of suggestions.
Thank you once again, Father Barron. Excellent discussion and answers to questions. We appreciate it. Look on our website for the future speakers in the series. We don't have one lined up for next year yet, but we've been blessed to have 2 excellent speakers in Cardinal George and Father Barron so far. So please keep posted for them. Father Barron, thank you again. And please give a hand of applause. And I think I can speak on behalf of everyone, and especially the amount of work you have to do, that you have our prayers and our support. So God bless you in your ministry. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone, for coming.